Hello, this is Stephen Shwiff from the Columbia Gorge Community College speaking about Jamestown, and this is the first permanent English settlement in the New World, starting in 1608, and we're going to cover the history up to about 1620. In a subsequent lecture, we will discuss Virginia, which is the colony in the state that comes out of this small Jamestown settlement, and we'll discuss that along with the growth of that colony and the development of slavery in the South, which becomes the most typical slavery during this time. Now in 1606, James I, who had succeeded Elizabeth I when she died as King of England, launched a couple of companies to settle in Virginia. Now James's idea and his advisor's idea was to provide a buffer against the Spanish control of the New World. And they had a very successful colony, the Spanish did, in St. Augustine in Florida, which is still in existence and is in fact the oldest existing colony at this time. The system that they set up to establish these colonies were to create a joint stock company where investors would put in their money hoping for a return on whatever products the colony produced. Well, the Virginia company is one we're going to focus on because that will be the controlling group of Jamestown. So they were able to recruit, hire, bring in about 105 adventurers who arrived in May 6th of 1607 after 4 months of sea at the Cape Henry, which was named after Henry VIII, of course. Now this area was present-day Virginia, and Jamestown is still in existence as a town in Virginia. And it was on the Cape Henry off the Atlantic Ocean, and the settlers chose this area because of its access to the sea. There was a little bit of a waterway leading into the area. What they didn't realize was that it was a swamp, and in that swamp was malaria from the fleas that were living there. Now they didn't arrive when planting season had occurred. They were very late in the season, but the idea of this voyage was to create a permanent settlement, but to trade with the natives. And this was not an area unknown to the British explorers, or even to Europe in general, but had been mapped and somewhat looked at by different explorers who had come through, stayed on the waterways for the most part, seen Native Americans, and had even dealt with them in some areas, trading furs. And they had found that the natives were very interested in copper. And so these Jamestown settlers had brought a lot of copper in order to trade for food with the Native Americans. Now there's been a lot of criticism of this group of adventurers, this group of settlers, that they were not laborers, that they were gentlemen, assistants. If you look at the list of people who came on that first voyage, you see things like jewelers and carpenters, people like that. Now, this group was very capable of creating a fort, and they built the fort within a week or two of arrival, and this protected them from the Native Americans and somewhat from the weather, although they hadn't anticipated the very harsh winters of Virginia. They thought because Virginia was roughly equal to England in some of the latitudes, that they would have very similar weather. But no, because of the current, the wind current in the Atlantic Ocean, Virginia, and we'll find out later when we discuss the Puritans and Massachusetts as well, have very harsh winters compared to what the Englanders were used to. So the idea was to trade with the Indians and survive the winter. Well, they were able to make some relations with the natives. The natives fought them to some extent, but also traded just a little bit because this winter, or this planting season and the next couple, were going to be very harsh for all the inhabitants of Virginia, not just the new arrivals, but the Indians are going to find that they also have problems with crop production. So over half of the settlers died that first winter. Now Jamestown suffered disaster after disaster, but the one lucky stroke brings us to one of the first heroes in American history, John Smith. Now we'll find that John Smith was quite a promoter of himself